You're listening to The Money Hour with your host, Tina Mitchell, and co-host Keelan Harvey on Alternative Talk AM 1150. Now, back to the show with local mortgage experts Tina Mitchell and Keelan Harvey.
Welcome back to The Money Hour on 1150 AM KKNW, the Saturday, June 1st show. I am your host, Tina Mitchell.
And I'm your co-host, Keelan Harvey.
Your local mortgage experts. We are here to help you build a strong financial blueprint 1 week and one show at a time. If you're hearing our show at a different time or day, you are listening to a rebroadcast. To connect with our guests, you can call the show at 1-855-400-1150 or online at themoneyhour.com. Again, that's 1-855-400-1150 or online at themoneyhour.com. In studio right now, Kyle Williams of IPX 1031. What you need to know about tax-deferred exchanges. Kyle, welcome back into studio.
Thanks for having me, Tina. Thank you, Keelan.
You're welcome.
And a little bit about Kyle. Kyle Williams, Vice President and Account Executive with Investment Property Exchange Services, Inc. Resides in Bellevue. He is responsible for sales covering Washington State with over a decade of financial brokerage and real estate experience, including REITs, 1031s, and other real estate investments. He enjoys speaking with brokers, CPAs, attorneys, investors, and real estate professionals. Kyle received his BA from the Central Washington University of Political Science and History.
So Kyle, 1031 exchange, awesome product, awesome way to help yourself in possibly a tight pinch. Tell people what this 1031 exchange is.
Yeah, so Section Code 1031 is really something the IRS gives us that allows an individual, maybe a partnership, a corporation, really any property owner that owns business or investment property, to sell that property and exchange into a new property without paying federal income taxes.
Love ways to not have to pay federal income taxes.
Yes.
How long has this been around, Kyle?
So 1031 has actually been around for almost 100 years. I think 1921, and it was called Section 202 back then, but in its modern form, really for close to 30 years.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
I think I said product earlier. It's really a tool. Let's be real. It's more of a
It's
tool as a product. It's kind of a tool in
Tool
your tool
product.
belt, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Product tool.
Oh, yeah, product tool. There we go. Just new term. What does the term like kind mean in a 1031 exchange? I know that's important.
Yeah, this is probably the most common question that comes up in class I do or when clients call. They say, what's this like kind thing mean? Really, in the 1031 world, it means any property held for business or investment purposes. So that could be your residential rentals, it could be raw land, could be commercial, even 30-year leases are technically fee simple and like kind property when it comes to 1031. So any property held for business or investment purposes is like kind with each other, meaning that you can sell out of one of those and go into another one.
So that is fairly broad then.
Yeah, absolutely. So I could sell raw land in Montana and exchange it for the Space Needle because they're both
Yeah.
they're both theoretically held for business or investment purposes. So it's really a broad brush and would include essentially everything outside of personal use properties and flips.
Gotcha.
Because everything else is essentially held for business or investment purposes when you think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Kyle, what about who's eligible and who is ineligible for a 1031 exchange?
Yeah, so people that hold property for business or investment purposes can exchange. And so this could be really any property owner. A lot of times right now, it's foreign nationals. People may live in China and own property here, and they can actually exchange that. It could be an LLC, a C Corp, two spouses, an individual. So really anyone who owns property held for business or investment purposes is eligible to do a 1031 exchange. And I should probably say, too, the term business or investment purposes is not really defined by the IRS. So with everything I say today, clients always want to talk to their CPA for tax guidance.
Great disclosure.
And make sure that their CPA signs off on everything and they consult the CPA to figure out if their property truly does qualify.
Yeah. So did you mention the ineligible? Who is ineligible for it?
Yeah, personal use properties are a big one.
Yeah.
So like your primary residence, you can't do an exchange on that. Vacation homes, second homes, flips don't qualify either because they're technically not held for business or investment purposes.
And will you go expand on that for a second with the flips? Because, we had the privilege to have you in for one of my Power Hour Lunch and Learns, came in and spoke with all my real estate agents, and they loved it. And you kind of given a story of how this can, this can tie in, and if you really have to be careful of what you're considered a flip or not flip, correct?
Yeah, so it comes down to really what the intent is. Holding period is a big thing. The IRS has never defined how long you specifically have to hold for before you can do a 1031 exchange. As long as it's held for business or investment purposes, a lot of CPAs will tell you if you get some rent on it and truly hold it for business or investment purposes for a year or longer, you're probably okay. But ultimately, it all comes down to the CPA, because there's been plenty of cases where clients have held for under a year, maybe 6 months. I've even heard of cases where it's 3 months. They get an unsolicited offer. Maybe a developer is buying up a city block, and they've got a long-term business plan in place and intend to hold long-term.
Okay.
But they get an offer they can't refuse. And so they go to their CPA and say, can I exchange this? I've only held for 6 months. And the CPA says, well, your intent wasn't to flip this or sell it. Your intent was to hold it long-term. So absolutely do an exchange.
Make sure you document really well.
Exactly.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So, Kyle, you've been in studio before, but for our brand new listeners, why would somebody want to do a 1031 exchange? Where's the value for them to do that?
Yeah, so a lot of people, especially around here with prices going up the way they do and the way they have over the last decade, 2 decades, 3 decades, they have a lot of gain issues in their investment properties. Like, say, rentals, for example. If someone bought a rental on Queen Anne 30 years ago, they could have bought it for $75,000 or $100,000.
Yeah,
a small little house, and now that lot itself is worth $800,000, $900,000. And so that's a huge gain issue. And they can't take any primary residence exclusion or any other tax benefit outside the 1031. So that rental that they've had for all these years, they can actually exchange that, not pay any federal income taxes, and buy something else. It's a really, really great tool.
So let's talk about exchanging anything else outside of real estate. Is that possible?
So it was until January 1st of last year. With that Tax Cut and Jobs Act, there were what's called personal property exchanges. And that section of 1031s actually made up a larger chunk of 1031s than real estate did. People were exchanging art, coins, collectibles, muscle cars, rental car fleets, irrigation equipment, anything you could think of, trademarks, anything held for business or investment purposes. But as of January 1st last year with the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, it's all gone away. So the only thing you can truly 1031 exchange is real estate held for business or investment purposes.
So people, if your property's gone up, you need to call Kyle, because he can hook you up with some great advice here. And speaking of you and your company, can you tell us a little bit about your guys, because this is really important, especially in this field, your financial security as a company, and how you guys hold funds for people, and all the detail you guys go into on just making sure that it's a safe, secure process.
Yeah, great question. So 1031s, what people don't really realize or know is that 1031s are largely unregulated. We are part of Fidelity National Financial, and that's very important because we have the highest level of protections in place. $100 million Fidelity bond, $30 million of errors and omissions on each account. And those are all voluntary. We don't have to have those, but we hold funds in a commercial bank account, which we specifically name the client on the account with us, where they will collect interest. And again, that's very, very important because there's so many 1031 companies out there without the protections that we have. And so we always want to make sure that client safety is first and foremost.
Yeah, very, very important if you're going through this process to make sure that you're working with somebody that has that, can protect you in that investment. We haven't talked about the time that you have to complete, because that's really an important part of the process as well. Timing is everything when it comes to a 1031 exchange.
Absolutely. A lot of people are worried about that 45-day thing, and they'll say, am I going to find a property in 45 days? And really what that means is that as soon as they close on their sale, they have 45 days to identify and basically let us know what they intend on purchasing. They don't have to be under contract, and although that's smart to do, they don't technically have to be under contract. They just have to let us know within 45 days what they intend on purchasing. So as everyone here knows, the market moves super quickly in the Seattle and Puget Sound area. So really we tell clients, as soon as you list your property for sale, start looking for new ones. Start trying to get under contract on a new property if you can. Don't drag your feet on this.
So we just came out of this crazy market with just literally no inventory. Some neighborhoods, literally no inventory. So what challenges came? I mean, what happens if they can't secure a property in 45 days?
So,
what's the worst case scenario here?
Yeah, so worst case scenarios is that the exchange fails and they pay taxes next April or whenever they file for this tax year. Ultimately, there's passive real estate investments like DSTs, Delaware Statutory Trusts, and things that they can use as a backup. But ultimately, there's no extensions outside of federally declared disaster. So clients cannot drag their feet. And we tell them that, don't go to Europe for a month and then come back on day 38 and spend a week looking for a property. You got to dedicate yourself because this market, I mean, it's a lot different here than, Missouri, for example. I mean, they might be able to get under contract super quickly there, but here, much tougher.
Yeah.
Don't procrastinate. Don't drag your feet. Is that the biggest mistake that you see, Kyle, with these 1031 exchanges, or do you see other mistakes along the way? What should people avoid?
Yeah, that's a big one when clients drag their feet on identifying properties and looking for properties. But probably the big one is just not getting the exchange set up in time. So in a 1031 exchange, we actually take title to funds and hold funds. That means that we have to set up the exchange before they close on their sale. So at least once a week, I'll get a call from a client that wants to set up an exchange, and I'll say, that's great. Where's escrow at? And they'll say, oh, it closed last week. Unfortunately,
womp, womp, womp.
Womp, womp. Debbie Downer voice. Unfortunately, they can't do an exchange, and they'll say, Kyle, are you sure? My realtor thought that it'd probably be easier to set up after the exchange. Sorry, there's nothing we can do. It has to be set up, and we have to take title to funds because if the client ever has control of funds, there's nothing we can do.
Yeah. So, Kyle, anything new that you see coming up on the horizon or any changes that you're forecasting?
So the 1031 legislation that we talked about a little earlier with personal property going away, I think real estate with 1031s, that was definitely looked at and really on the chopping block. About 2 years ago for the Tax Cut and Jobs Act. And it wouldn't surprise me to see it come up again. I know PricewaterhouseCoopers, one of the big four accounting firms, did a study, and I think they said it would have like a negative net impact of $165 billion on the economy, primarily focused in real estate if they got rid of 1031s for real estate.
Really?
So I hope Congress isn't short-sighted enough to bring that back up, but it's always imperative that you talk to your Congress people, let them know that
Patty's making notes over here as you're chatting right now.
And absolutely. She talked about working for Senator Murray. You can always email your senators, write letters in, but all that stuff really helps.
So, Kyle, can you tell? I remember when you did our lunch and learn, and you used a pretty powerful example of a 1031 exchange. There's a pretty cool story of one of your buddies, and that really kind of helped me to put things in perspective a little bit. Can you share that with our listeners? Yeah.
So, one of my friend's parents owned basically a teardown on Queen Anne that they had bought in decades earlier for I think $25,000 and sold it a couple years ago for like $1.5 million, and they used all that equity to put down on a much bigger multifamily unit and didn't pay any taxes. So their original cost basis was next to nothing, and all of a sudden they're in a $5 million multifamily unit without paying taxes. And 1031, something like that, is awesome because it helps the economy. It helps people push more equity into the economy and create jobs and everything. So yeah, 1031's just awesome.
It allows them to leverage it like no other. I mean, we kind of think of it like the downside, the taxes of it, us paying, and it's just to protect us. But you could actually use it on the positive side as a leverage for your investment portfolio and shoot you to a whole different planet when it comes to that. I mean, it's fantastic.
Absolutely not uncommon to see clients use all their equity and put it 25% down on a much bigger multifamily unit or go to commercial or something like that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Kyle, for coming in and being our resource and everything around 1031 tax exchange. So thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up next in the Money Hour, how to succeed in real estate. Katie Grindon of KG Realty, right here on 1150 AM KKNW after the short break.